Welcome to the Skeptic's Guide to Investing with Steve Davenport and Clem Miller. Every 2 weeks, Steve and Clem bring you brief investment insights you may not find anywhere else. We hope you enjoy today's episode. Here are Steve and Clem.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Skeptic's Guide to Investing. Today, I'm here without Clem. He's wandering around Japan somewhere, eating lots of sushi. And I'm here with my friend, Aradhana Kejriwal. Aradhana and I were members of the CFA Society Atlanta, and we're both presidents. And she was with me when I was president, and she was part of my team. And we've had a great professional relationship for the last 10 plus years. And when I think about women in finance, I think about Aradhana and how she brings it to every event or everything she does for her clients. And I think about that passion, and I think about how much we can make a difference when we care about our clients. So I'd like to, talk to Aradhana about some of the things she's doing. And I think that her career and her lessons about how she's facing the investment world could be very good information for a woman who's thinking about a career, or just somebody who wants to understand how women have succeeded in this business previously. So, Aradhana, welcome. And I'm so glad to have you on and talking with us. And I guess I'd like to say, how do you feel about today in the markets? And we're called Skeptic's Guide because we're a little bit skeptical sometimes. Are you skeptical, or are you a skeptic or not?
Well, thank you, Steve, for having me on your podcast. I truly appreciate it. And I truly treasure and value our friendship. So really excited to be here. Am I a skeptic or not? I think just the nature of what we do for a living, Steve, you and I, it just naturally makes us a skeptic. We are living in very interesting times. And there's no doubt about that. There's no shortage of news. And yet you see the markets keep going up. And so as a skeptic and as a long-term, cautious, diversified investor, yes, I do look at the frothiness in the market, and I'm concerned. And so that's the reason my clients are invested in high quality, cautious, very diversified portfolio. Because the world that we're living in, you just don't know what's that one catalyst that'll pop the bubble that we're in. But it's actually quite welcoming to see this year the markets rally quite broadening away from what we saw in 2023 and 2024. Yet we still are in a very concentrated market, but it's at least a relief to see the international markets doing well and sort of broadening. But yes, skeptic indeed, and skeptic on everything that's happening around us.
Can you help our listeners understand there's this term OCIO, Outsourced Chief Investment Officer. And we do some of it at, my partner works doing that at Circa. But can you tell me and tell our listeners a little bit about what is an OCIO, and how does it make a difference for a small firm that might be trying to do too many things, and you can come in and help them with one of the main parts of their RIA business?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, OCIO, Outsourced Chief Investment Officer. I run an OCIO firm. And so one should think about a OCIO firm as a dedicated investment department that you don't have to build, you don't have to hire or manage. Once you outsource the investment management function to an OCIO. So a typical OCIO firm would cover portfolio construction that is tailored to the advisory firm's clients. The investment philosophy would be aligned, and it would be aligned, and also it would be aligned with your planning process. An OCIO firm would do the manager due diligence. So that would basically dig deeper than the basics and do very thorough due diligence so that it helps you avoid surprises and you're just not relying on some star ratings to find a manager. You're actually doing the in-depth due diligence. You're doing ongoing market analysis. So so the strategies that the advisory firm is offering stays relevant. And of course, as an OCIO firm, there's support for other investment related activities or needs, like, if there are any client questions, there are prospect reviews, there's trading, rebalancing questions, looking at rebalancing softwares, things like that. So the point is not to take over the advisory firm's client relationships. It's basically to give the advisory firm and the advisors the freedom to focus on the clients. So instead of dividing for an advisory firm, instead of them dividing their time between client meetings and then coming back to investment modeling, you're sort of staying in the lane of being the relationship manager with your end clients, knowing that the investment side is handled. So that's typically the role of a OCIO. And I think the biggest differentiator by having an OCIO in this very crowded advisory marketplace is that you can offer the same depth and sophistication as a larger firm without really sacrificing a boutique feel. Like you have a CFA on staff without paying the big dollars, and you get the same level of sophistication. You're walking into client, like the advisor can walk into a client meeting knowing that you have very current, very well-researched answers to questions on the market environment, the risk, the opportunities. So you're essentially more focused, the advisor is more focused on the quality of the relationships with their end clients and not have to worry about the investment piece. So I think that's really where the differentiator comes from for the advisory firm, because the quality that they're offering to their clients just jumps to a whole different level.
Yeah, it sounds like it's more about enhancing and augmenting than it is about replacing. Because I think that, I think specialization, especially in our industry, is important. And you can try to be all things to all people, but it ends up that somebody has to suffer. And I think that people who start out as planners or accountants, that's really where their heart is in a lot of cases. So the other part about trading and making some of these choices, I think it's a great way for a firm to look and feel bigger and focus their energies on the things that really bring them more joy. I think this whole space is getting very, very complicated because, I don't know about you, but I feel like the RIA industry and AI are going to go through a very big transition. Do you have any early feelings about AI and the advisor, or do you find it's way too early to get into that kind of thinking and that we're being fearful about something we don't really know?
No, I think AI is very relevant to our practice, and it is one that we all should be adapting. I don't see it as a threat. I see it as a companion, because it makes you more efficient, right? So you talk about things like investment committee minutes, note taking, right? Now you get like minutes within right after the meeting, the minutes are produced with the things to do and all of that, because there's so many good apps out there that that can help you. AI can help you, do a lot of things that can help you make you more efficient. So I think I see that as a companion. Can AI really replace what our end advisors are doing for their clients? I don't believe so. You cannot replace a human being's instinct in managing a client relationship. I cannot see AI sort of taking that over. Because as advisors in our business, the advisors have a close relationships with their end clients. You can't have a machine talking to that end client. So So I cannot see AI sort of taking over that element. And we've read so many things on the behavioral side that AI is sending some wrong prompts, which is causing people to take some extreme steps, right? So AI I think AI is something that is a great companion and making business practices more efficient, more effective, managing time in a much better way so that you can focus on things that are more important, like managing client relationships. So I feel there is a place in business. And then, of course, if you kind of um a pivot to the trading element or the technology element, AI is just helping so much in developing presentations, things that would take you much longer, or just sort of summarizing um uh, big white papers that are out there. I mean, there's so much of benefit from AI. So I think it's sort of looking at the glass half full, half empty, and I tend to look at the half full.
Yeah, I mean, we even two old guys like me and Clem. I mean, when we started this podcast, they asked us if we wanted a, AI transcript from the calls, and I'm like, what? And then I looked at how it recorded the voices, interpreted the tone of one voice versus another to know that the person has changed. Like, it's not perfect, believe me. It still gets a little, I still don't know why it doesn't capitalize, certain words and doesn't do certain things, but it really is an amazing feature when you can take an hour-long podcast and transcribe all of the conversations and attribute them mostly correctly to the different people. I mean, I think for people who can't listen to the podcast and want to read it, it's a tremendous asset to be able to, do some of these things. And I think of it as, only going to help us. And I don't think population wise, there's going to be enough advisors for people. So I think we're going to see a shortage because there's quite a few advisors in that 65 and up range who are looking to sell their practices. And if they sell their practices to someone else, well, now that practice has twice as many people and twice as many clients, and they're going to have to get more efficient. It's not like, I don't think that we're running out of people and AI is going to eat everyone's lunch. I have a feeling that people who do it well will be able to communicate better, will be able to send out, I can ask AI to write one of our blogs and say, hey, talk about this concept and talk about, and, you can develop some pretty good materials. I don't think that they're as good as the human writer. And my partner and I argue about, whether I could replace him with a chat GPT, but we, it comes down to having the right perspective and having experience. And I look at people who make a difference and make clients feel at home and make clients feel confident. It's not going to happen from a bot. So I think that's very interesting. What are the main things that you think about in terms of your advantage as, an OCIO? What's your special sauce?
We'll be right back.
We hope you're enjoying our episodes. If you are, then we'd greatly appreciate your liking, following, and sharing. Help us help others. Now let's get back to the discussion.
Yeah, the differentiator between me and any of the larger TAMPs or OCIO firms out there is the customization that PIC offers to its clients. So it's not just cookie cutter solutions being delivered. It's deliberate, customized um, deliverables with the same depth and sophistication that you would get from a larger firm, but without sacrificing the advisory firm's boutique feel. So I think
Yeah.
that is the biggest thing that that PIC offers, and that's what I believe why clients choose PIC, because they've sort of feel that the investment department is sitting inside their office and not sitting outside.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the biggest feel. And of course, because PIC is a much sort of smaller, more niche in a more niche space, the follow-ups are more quick and they're more thoughtful. And you know, my advisory clients are not feeling that they're just getting a 50,000-foot view answer. They're getting a very thoughtful answer that's catered to their end clients. So I think
Yeah.
that's what makes the biggest difference between hiring a boutique firm and hiring, one of the large OCIOs.
No, I think that your perspective with regard to clients and the behavioral aspects and your experience at Join and some of your other experiences in your career have put you in a unique position to give a good perspective. And I'd also say that your commitment to the community and to women and to people coming on board from that you help in India is an inspiration to a lot of people. And I think that the way, and this is going to sound very patronizing to both of us, but I have to say it, the way that we've tried to shape how CFAs are perceived in the community and how we can be offsetting to some of the negativity around finance and investments, I think is the future. And I think advisors need to think about their community just as much as they think about their clients, because I think that one helps the other, right? If you help an advisory firm become a little more rounded and show some of the personalities of the firm and how they're committed to this cause because of a parent or this cause because of a child, it shows us as not just numbers machines that crank out an answer. When they say, "What's my risk?" we tell them, it's the 14.4. I think we say, well, there's many ways to measure risk, and we want to do it in the way that means the most to you. And I think that your process of doing that, has got to make every firm you touch better, right?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for saying that. No, absolutely. I think so. If you think about the CFA charter and what that has taught us, definitely we have that strong technical foundation, right? That's what when we talk about risk, like you said, we're not just looking at risk just from a performance standpoint. We're looking at risk from 50 different ways to look at risk. Was it fees? Is it liquidity? Is it concentration? Whatever it is, right? So we're looking. So the charter has given us that very, very strong foundation and a deep knowledge from an investment standpoint. And and the ethics, the ethical training that you and I've gone through, and everybody else who has a CFA charter has gone through. So I think all of that is extremely important as you and I have built our careers and have built um, our individual practices to establish credibility, right? So I think that's one of the biggest skill sets that we've gotten from the charter and the program, that we've stayed curious. We apply these skills in real world scenarios. We are, in whatever, and that's sort of what we're delivering to our clients. The trust, the credibility, and the technical skills. And of course, you talked about the behavioral part of it, and we focus on that as well. Uh, you look at the charter now; it's sort of morphing more to adapt to the AI environment. So I think there are a lot of good things that we as CFA charter holders bring to our careers and we built over time, along with, of course, the experience. You worked at various banks. I worked at various banks. We both have worked in advisory practices. So, of course, experience is there. And then so you add the CFA charter and the experience together. And that's, I think, what we're delivering and making it more um, making our clients feel that when they're hiring us, um, they can trust that we'll deliver with full integrity.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one thing to have a person who's completely technically sound, and I think the CFA does a good job of giving you the broad base of knowledge to help do that. But I think ultimately it's about the relationship, stupid. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you can have all the knowledge, but if it's not communicated and it's not organized and it's not meant to satisfy the client need,
Yeah,
it's just noise.
absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
and I like to think that we want less noise in our life and we want simplicity and we want balance. And those things, you know, come from somebody who's thoughtful, developing a solution that is customized and boutique. And I know that everybody would like to say just, you know, 80% S&P index and 20% the ag and go to sleep for 20 years. And there are some advisors doing that. But I think the advisors who are really making an impact with clients are thinking about timing, thinking about college, thinking about their children, how they, you know, how they save for college and how they get through some of the financial hurdles in life. That's what makes people sleep better at night, is knowing that they're, and I love the fact that there's so many good statistics about, and people who have an advisor are much less likely to make a mistake and they're much more likely to feel confident about their finances because they're just, you know, it's hard. If you're an individual today and both of you are working and you've got 3 kids and there's just a lot going on with soccer and, you know, volleyball and all the challenges of life. And I just think that you're, you know, you're not trying to do your own dental work. You're not trying to do your own, you know, heart surgery. You give it up to a specialist. And I think the same's true about your money. And so I think it's really important to find an Aradhana or someone at a firm who can, you know, help make your financial journey a little less cumbersome. I know you spend a lot of time with DEI, and personally, you're involved in helping a lot of women. Can you kind of give me a, you know, what's the status 2025 DEI in finance, DEI in society? Like, how are you feeling? Are you feeling discouraged by the current administration? Are you feeling like it's like the world has kind of gone in the opposite direction after making progress? What are you feeling?
So I will say, as a true CFA charter holder, I focus on data versus on everything that's happening from an uh, noise standpoint, if I may say so, with the current administration. So if you look at data, right, and just demographics, women will control a much larger share of wealth and investable assets than there's ever been, right? So U.S. women, so there's that McKinsey study that said U.S. women right now are controlling, projections are that they will control about 34 trillion of investable assets. That's about 38% of the US assets that is out there, right? So if women control more assets, then their investment preferences, their risk tolerance, their goals matter more, right? So firms should be tuned to the needs of women. So better advisory approaches, better tailor wealth and behavioral and investment services really, really matter. So if that is the case, then as female controlled wealth grows, you need to have that pipeline of having more women advisors or having more women in the investment field. It becomes even more and more necessary. So what has worked is probably not going to work in future because women are going to be managing more, are going to be in control of more money. So if they're going to be in control of more money, you cannot just ignore them. You have to develop that pipeline, right? So you have to have more regulatory, more industry pressures to bridge that gender gap that we see right now. I think there should be more thoughtful leadership. There should be more transparent hiring decisions, more education in the schools. You and I have been very, very passionately involved also in financial literacy and going and talking in schools, and of course, DEI efforts. And that's not to say that I don't believe in merit-based hiring. I, of course, believe in merit-based hiring. But at the same time, I believe that when you're doing merit-based hiring, there should be that equal opportunity given to women. And if you just follow the simple principle of follow the money, and if the projections from a demographic standpoint say more money with women, then you need to be focused more on women now, so that 10, 20, 15 years from now, when we get to that point, we're not scrambling.
Right.
So
I
I
agree.
think it's very important. I mean,
You're preaching to the converted. I believe that women and their natural, their natural ability to nurture and to support and to educate make them the ideal advisor. And what I found most compelling was when I started talking about financial literacy 10 years ago and creating the foundation, I said, I don't know who's going to come out. I don't know who's going to answer the call. I don't know who's going to give us money. I don't know what this is going to be. I'm just going to go ahead and do it and see what happens and see how much impact we can have. And 80% of our volunteers for the foundation were women. And so the CFA Society has a 20% women and 80% men. So you can see there's something different there. And what my belief is, and I think it's coming true, is we have a resource here that is designed to make people feel comfortable and make people feel more in touch with their money. And what we've done is by creating a harsher and more competitive and more high-paced financial industry, we've alienated half of the population that we should have engaged in with us in this effort. And I believe that we're going to see more and more women are going to emphasize the need for financial literacy. And I was just really glad I had Gene Natali on from Trotwood at the Pittsburgh CFA. And, he's saying that 60% of students in the United States now have a high school requirement for financial literacy. I remember 10 years ago, that was like 10. So I think we're moving in the right direction. And a lot of it has to do with women and their desire to make things better for those who come after them.
absolutely.
So I guess I'd like to kind of go towards your money story, because we like to talk about if Aradhana was getting out of high school or in high school and trying to decide what you could do, what would you do today? Whether it might be different or the same as what you did. And tell me, is there somebody in your life that came along that said, hey, look, Aradhana, you're very good at this, this, and this. I think, you could, I want to help you to be the person you can be.
Yeah,
Tell
no,
me
that's a
the
great
Aradhana story
question.
about money.
Yeah, no, that's a great, great question, Steve. And I kind of would start with the financial literacy part of it, because I think um, the reason we're doing so much with the foundation and financial literacy is because generally women are less confident investors. That is changing, and that's why education is very important. And for us to go and empower and educate women from a high school level is extremely important. So the 60% data that you suggested is really a good one. So when I look back and I see, what sort of made me go through my career. I started investing at a very, very young age, and a lot of that came um, from my parents and my mom, and just seeing her. So I definitely was raised by a very, very strong woman, and even my dad. So very supportive, very strong household, which sort of gave me the freedom to explore and do anything I wanted. So I wasn't sort of pigeonholed that, I need to be an engineer or a doctor. I was given that freedom. and
You have any brothers or I don't know your
my sister is an engineer, and she's in computer science, and she sort of followed the atypical route that you see in the Asian community, and she's done marvelous in her life as well. As far as, when I chose to go the finance route, I just loved investing, and this was in I started managing money right before the tech bubble, the start of the tech bubble. So I kind of saw that whole, the buildup of that bubble and that sort of that burst. And it taught me so much about long-term investing, the sort of the greed and the fear, that rules investing and that makes people capitulate. So I learned those lessons very, very early on. I learned very early on also that that as a woman, we tend to invest a little bit differently, in the sense that we're more risk aware. I wouldn't say conservative as much, but more risk aware is the term I would use. So I think that really, really helped shape how I manage money today, with a very, very keen eye towards towards being aware of human behavior. Because no matter how sound we are, it's our emotions, it's our greed and fear that makes a difference, right? So,
right. I mean,
so
I think
I and
you got to recognize it in order to address it. I think
absolutely.
that a lot of men just say, I'm going to get to the answer. And I think that we need to kind of look at the process and try to make the process a little more flexible, instead of saying, here's the answer.
And I know,
I
yeah.
think that we're all starting. I think we learn from each other, and I've learned a lot from the other officers at the CFA, like you and some of Kathy Chrisman and some of the other people that were just phenomenal at kind of bringing their own brand of investing. And I think that there is there is no one way. There is no silver bullet. And I think that the realization and the comfort that you're going to have to, adjust and be flexible, I think is a lot of men, and I'm not going to, qualify. Everyone has an idea of how you get to the end. And some people, it's much more of a cooperative journey, and some people, it's more of a individual journey. And
Absolutely.
I think that when we look at some of the great women investors, you can tell that they were very good at improving the board's overall rationale and how they looked at things, instead of just saying, we're going to go with whoever shouts the loudest and whoever has the strongest opinions. I think that we all realize that balancing opinions and balancing ideas leads to better results.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the biggest things that women bring to the table is, and one of the lessons that I learned growing up, is just being curious and asking questions. Be curious and be humble. So, like you said, if you are humble and flexible, and you're not the kinds who says, "What I know what I'm doing, and I know I'm doing it the right way, and I'm not going to change it," that's where you lead to poor decision making. And I think as a woman, um, and not to say that men don't do it, many men do it as well, and that's what makes them great investors. Challenge your own process, make it better, be humble, recognize that you're human and you're subject to the same emotions that someone else is. And we become, even though technically we have charters, so we're technically have more experience, but I think what makes us better investors is the fact that we recognize our constraints, and we try to develop processes that are more transparent and disciplined to question ourselves and say, okay, what is the other side like? So I think, I'm actually quite encouraged by the fact that data shows that, more wealth with women would, and typically money is what sort of takes everything. The change that should be coming and will come eventually is going to come because women are going to own more wealth, but also folks like you and the Aspet Foundation, what you started, the pipelines we're building, all of that, grassroots endeavors like this is what makes the difference.
Right. And that's what we're trying to do here with the podcast as well, is get people to listen, get people, and if a woman listens to this podcast and now feels more confident about addressing this, this career, I don't know how many women listeners we have. We have a lot of data on, the people's URLs and which cities are downloading. But I think that, all I can say is if you put good things out into the universe, I think somebody receives them, and those who receive them usually will share with others. And that's what we're trying to do. So I guess, is there any last thoughts you have about women investing, the markets? How would you leave with an advice to Aradhana 2.0, who's 21 years old and has just graduated from college? What would you?
So I'll say two things. One, if you're a Aradhana 2.0 a woman, remember most home budgets are managed by a woman. So there's no reason why, when a woman can manage her home budget so effectively, why a woman cannot manage money outside her home. There is absolutely no reason. So one is as competent, a woman is as competent. If she's competent inside the house, she's equally competent outside her house. So don't.
I hear you, girl. Say it. Say it loud. I have two daughters, so I've learned this the hard way. So
Right. So
I appreciate it.
yes, absolutely. So I really feel there's no reason to shy, and especially in our industry, which has a certain image, but I feel as a woman, we bring a lot of good things to the industry. So I would love for our pipeline to be the reverse at some point, where we're not just 20% women and 80% men. You know, may there be a time where it's the other way, or at least at parity, because we know we can, and we should, and we shouldn't shy. This is not just, we shouldn't shy behind the fact that it's just a man's world. It is a person's world, which has both men and women. So I'd leave it, I'd leave the podcast with that thought, that never second guess yourself. Um,
No, I think that's great advice. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people who are fearful of what they don't know in investing. And my question is, if when I try to work in my yard, I try to learn as much as I can about the things I'm planting, because if I want them to live and thrive, I got to go outside my regular, circle of financial people and start to look at some of the YouTube videos on garden. I mean, I think we all have this desire to have all the knowledge, but you got to take the first step. And the first step is, you know what I mean? Try something. Try investing in that index fund and that, and then say, okay, now I understand that. I'm going to invest internationally, and then say, okay, I really believe in India as an economy. I'm going to buy the India ETF. I mean, I'd love to hear your last thing I forgot to mention was the work you do with women quarterly on calls about careers and finance and stuff. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yes, sure. So thank you for mentioning that. So I do quarterly calls in India with students in India that are thinking about the CFA program, or are thinking about the MBA program and want to know why doing a CFA is better, and how how I've sort of gone through my career of going through working at different banks, and sort of jumping very early on in my career to get as much experience as I could. So I do a lot of calls with them, sort of talking about giving them career advice, and this is, like I said, be curious, be humble, and always look to grow. And so I do that. I typically get about 150 students every quarter. that are exploring careers in finance. So it's
Great. I mean, that's
Yeah.
500 people who have had somebody reach back and try to lift them up. I mean, it's inspiring what you're doing, Aradhana. And I'd love to stay in touch and have you back here if you've enjoyed this as much as I have, because I think your perspective is refreshing. And I think that we all have to figure out a way to touch someone. And I guess I'd end this podcast that way and saying, this is a great example of people having different views and different ways to attack their lives. And we'd love you to share this. We'd love you to talk to your friends and talk to your neighbors about some of the ideas we propose here on Skeptics Guide. And we want to keep making everyone's lives better. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And we appreciate your support. And I hope you like the new format. We're going out weekly now instead of every 2 weeks. And I don't know if it makes a difference, but we're trying. And we keep wanting to deliver ideas that are current and ideas that are relevant to help you reach your financial wellness and improve your investing IQ. All right, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you and congratulations on 100 episodes.
The views shared on this podcast represent the personal investment views of the hosts. They are for educational purposes and not meant to be taken as investment advice. Listeners should consult their own investment, legal, and tax advisors. Past performance of any investments is not a guarantee for future return.